Commissioner Greg Bach, Commissioner Hawley,
Here.
Commissioner Gentis,
Here.
Commissioner Chorin,
Here.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Here.
Commissioner Lemke, Commissioner Lemke, Commissioner Stoker,
Here.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Here.
Alderman Nurbin, Alderman Nurbin, and Mayor Worth.
Here. So who is missing?
I have Alderman Nurbin not responding, Commissioner Lemke, and Commissioner Greg Bach.
But we still have a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Pursuant to our electronic rules, I'm supposed to remind people that please identify yourself before you begin to speak, unless I've called on you, because there could be people listening in on telephone. Please don't speak over one another. Please, and this is also for people who are observing the meeting, so please silence your phones and microphones except when you're speaking. So if everybody could please do that, it makes the meeting go much better. And finally, I just got a message that Alderman Nurbin can't get online for some reason. So perhaps, Robin, maybe if you could call him, or somebody, if there's anybody who can call him to help him. But mute yourself before doing so. And then finally, we do have new rules for meetings starting after our last council meeting, where the public may comment on topics on the meeting, but they do need to register in advance of the meeting. Has anybody registered for this meeting to provide comments? No. Okay. The first order of business is the roll call. Oh, wait, I mean the meeting. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind here. To approve the minutes for May 11th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, excuse me, was there someone? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The next item is a one-lot certified survey map approval to update the property description for the parcel located at 8549 Highland Road. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move approval of the design.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussions, comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The next item on the agenda is the landscape plan approval for the athletic facility that's going in the business park at the northwest corner of Executive Drive, or not corner, but in the northwestern portion. Is anybody going to be telling us anything about this? Kapalua, or?
Yeah, I can just be brief. This was a request at the last planning commission meeting that the landscape plan come back for planning commission approval. They did submit the plan. Our landscape consultant did review it. Ahead of the meeting, we gave the applicant a few of the recommendations based upon the consultant's review. And they had already revised the landscape plan and submitted that to staff, and it addressed all of staff's recommendations. So the plan that is included in your packet is the one that staff supports and recommends approval this evening.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Actually, excuse me, my name is Mark Hertzfeld with Design to Construct. I would like to address this for a moment, if that's possible.
Excuse me, Mr. Hertzfeld?
Yes, I'm the architect for Design to Construct who's been working with staff on this landscape plan. And I wanted to address some of the, one of the items that came up during our review was additional screening that was requested from the consultant for the city across the northern edge of the property. I submitted photographs to staff showing that the entire northern and western edge of the property is completely screened with mature trees currently. And it seemed excessive to ask for additional trees to fill in that area. The whole property is surrounded by 20-foot tall trees. Adding additional screening in there just seemed a bit over on top. All the rest of the comments we're willing to accept from staff, but the additional, I think there's 7 trees we're being asked to add to the north edge of the property, and you can see it's very, very maturely grown currently, and we would like to have that component removed if possible from the approval.
I then have a question for staff on this issue. In the memo seems to indicate that you accept their plan. Does their plan show these 7 additional trees?
They do. So I don't know if you can see my screen up here. Based upon the comments that we got back, the original submittal before our comments only showed screening on the east side of this northern property line. The consultant had recommended that they add, just to balance out the northern property line, additional trees to the west. I think this is the area where the applicant is concerned with, because there is existing landscape buffering on the other side of the property line. So they're just asking for the planning commission to consider removing the requirement, which is based upon the consultant's comments, and staff does support what the consultant is saying, but ultimately planning commission can waive that if they believe that the existing landscape buffer to the north is sufficient.
And why is the what do you mean by balance?
Well, originally they were only proposing it on the east side, so I don't know if you can see my arrow here. This area over here, they had not proposed anything at all to the west, and they were proposing a few the landscape buffer on this end to the east, but they had completely left this area empty. So,
but can you address their concerns that there is a buffer there, so we can understand why we would add the additional trees? I'm all for trees. I just want to know if there's a reason for it.
Well, there is that existing buffer, so if we feel that, we know that to the north there's residential, so if anything happened to that landscape buffer on the residential side, there would be no buffering to screen this building on this side. So it's kind of just, it may be excessive, but it really is just so that they are also responsible for screening their building should anything happen to the landscape buffering to the north, which is not on their property.
Now I understand. Okay,
I have a question.
Mr. Jordan.
The seven trees that he's mentioning, is that along the entire extent of the north or the western portion of the north property line?
He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just this western portion.
It's western portion, okay.
There are 4 trees on the western component that the consultant asked for, and then we have also added 3 additional trees on the eastern portion of the north property line to increase the screening there as well.
Okay, back to where we were. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Did we have a motion? That's a question. Was there a motion made and seconded?
No.
No. Is there a motion?
Before we go there, not having been out on the site, I'm kind of at a loss as to what it looks like, and the comment with regards to future development on the north and the existing buffer trees being altered or removed. I mean, wouldn't that be addressed at that time? I don't know.
Well, to the north is existing residential, so that's their screening. This would just be additional screening if we feel that this use here is responsible for screening their own building on their own property. You could also recommend a reduction. I mean, they provided maybe more trees than they feel that they wanted to. So it could be a reduction in what they're showing. It could be removal of the landscaping if you feel that the buffering to the north, which is not on their property, but it already is buffering the residential. It could be a removal of this based upon the existing landscaping there, or it could be a reduction, or it could be to keep it as shown on the plan.
I guess my thoughts, again, not having seen it, I'd have to probably, fall back on the consultant's opinion. So in light of that, I guess I make a motion to approve the plan as it's been presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I'll tell you where I come down on this. I don't know what the buffer is to the north. I can see a line of green, and that's about what I think what it shows. And my concern with that is, considering the world in which we live, where whole species of trees every 10 or 20 years decides to die, I think we particularly where we're putting commercial property up next to residential property, we want to be certain that we're going to have a good screen of trees. And each property should be responsible for providing some screenage. So, I don't know why, if their trees die to the north, it then becomes solely their responsibility for creating screenage rather than this property's also. And therefore, I think that having landscaping on each side is sensible. I don't know if that makes sense to others, but I think it does to me. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Good luck. Sorry we didn't reduce the trees, but we do look forward to your project. Thank you. And then the final item on our agenda for the evening, if I remember correctly, because I'm trying to get there, is the development agreement, and particularly a couple of provisions in the development agreement. The update figure 5, acceleration and bypass lanes. I'm a little confused. I'm assuming Ms. Director Kirsten Lundin, are you going to handle this?
Have a team effort, but that one I certainly can address, yes.
I'm missing the acceleration deceleration lanes in the packet. And maybe when I was reviewing it before we came, I'm having trouble finding it. Can you help us out there? And I know I had a lot to do with creating that development agreement.
It's packet page 34.
Okay. So whoever is going to start us off, please start us off.
Well, not to step on Kim's toes, but I'll happily lead us off here. As you may recall now from several months ago, there was a policy discussion with respect to several elements that are standard to the development agreement. Staff has always utilized a template as the basis of starting with developers, but in discussions with Planning Commission, there was a desire to make several points that had been discussed as either waivers or specifics to a development to become standard in the development agreement. So we took the opportunity to go through. That was mostly with respect to the number of model homes allowed prior to final plat. There was also some discussion about whether or not we required full pavement prior to final plat. And I lost my page for the last item, which was, whether or not the model homes could be installed prior to the installation of the binder course. So we put together the language per the discussion that we had with the Planning Commission last, and then we took the opportunity to have several attorneys review it. And update and refresh the language. We also tried to simplify the document. We used to have separate documents depending on whether it was a subdivision plat or a condominium plat, and whether or not there were public utilities or private utilities. And we attempted to combine and streamline those into one document. And then obviously as the developer and the policy changes, then that the developer would take this document, fill in all of the specifics for their development, and then submit it to staff with their application. So what we're asking for is approval of that template DA, which would then become an exhibit to the standard specifications of land development. And then if there's a consideration to allow a reduced acceleration, deceleration, and or bypass lanes, and we're requesting approval of an updated exhibit 5.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Stoker.
And in full disclosure, I have not read through every word of this, but something that was jumping out on me is item number 27, model homes, subsection A, which is on page, let's see what page is that, page 10 of the document. I don't know what page it is in the packet. I think it's 44 in the packet. Is that something new? Where you're starting to discuss model hours? Or I'm sorry, is that new that you would, I'm not sure what you're getting at with that 27 subsection A. Are you saying that they're going to potentially issue the permit prior to the recording?
Correct, of the final plat.
And have you done that previously?
We've been requested to, yes. We have built that in. Go ahead, Jack.
I was just saying, this kind of comes out of the whole conversation with the Foxtown plat when we were debating 2 versus 6 and what the standard was. And we really haven't had a standard. We've been doing like typically 1 or 2, but there was nothing in the development agreement that stated that. So this is basically just putting numbers in there to show what you're allowed, so that someone doesn't come forward and ask for deviation, then they're basically, you know, they're going against what we've approved in terms of the template itself. One thing I think we do need to clarify though, is that number of homes is for the per phase. I don't think it says that. We should clarify that. Because you could have,
I think we did that because we usually do a separate DA per phase.
right, but I think it doesn't say in there. I mean, somebody could they have a 100 lot subdivision, but 20 in the first phase, they want maybe all of them built in the first phase. We should just clarify that, I think.
Well, the resolution does allow us to change things for form and format that do not modify the policy discussion.
Let me point out kind of how we got to where we are on the, there were a few of us who went over the development agreement. There are still some pending questions and comments about, they're not major or significant, because some people got their comments in very, very late in the discussion, which some of those comments raised other comments. So from an overall standpoint, I think the purpose behind having this here tonight is to talk about the model homes as well as the deceleration policy. And in fact, there's no reference in the development agreement to a Exhibit 5, so that's another change that needs to be made to the development agreement, because there's nothing that would even make it part of.
It's all in the standard specifications for land development.
Okay, so that goes into the standard specifications, not in the development agreement.
Well, they're both going in the standard specifications for land development, an update to Exhibit 5 and the template DA.
Okay. So, but what you were talking about, Mr. Stoker, Commissioner Stoker, the last time we discussed that, I think this is fairly consistent with the discussion we had, with the exception of what Jack talked about, and is consistent with what's happened, I think, with the property on the corner of Farmdale and Mequon Road.
Yeah, very frankly, my concern was more if you look at Highlander Estates, that was done in 3 phases, and we had a parade of homes in there. And I don't know the numbers, but I'm guessing the first phase was maybe 30 lots. And according to this, we're only allowing 3 model homes, whereas a parade of homes might have 5 or 6. So as long as there's some flexibility built into this, that if someone's trying to do a parade of homes, I wasn't asking the question for my subdivision. I was thinking more of a parade of homes situation.
And that was actually the issue that staff brought up, was that prior to this, we did have that flexibility. But by writing these requirements into the DA does not allow for that flexibility. So in that case, that subdivision or that development would have to request a waiver.
Okay.
But didn't they basically, if I remember correctly, because I was on the planning commission and the council at the time, didn't they come forward and get special approval anyhow?
Well, yes, they were all negotiated as a part of the DA. It was written into the DA that way, but previously this was all negotiated as a part of a DA. There wasn't a requirement for a maximum number of homes.
But this is actually more permissive than what was there before, because before they had to make a special request for anything. Now there is what is allowed kind of as a matter of course. And then if they want something more than that, that's the negotiation and the request to the planning commission. So this is actually, could make most developments easier by saying, hey, you get this unless you make a special request.
Right.
Any special request.
At the top of page 10 has the considerations for a deviation of up to 10% for special circumstances, and that those special circumstances must be defined and presented by the developer at the time of application.
They could always ask for anything, just harder to get it. Right? And regardless of what page 10 says, if they came and asked for all 10 lots to be model homes, you'd say no. They could come to the planning commission, make the request. I'm sure the planning commission would say no, but I mean, there's nothing in this that precludes any particular request.
Right, and maybe I should back up. You may recall what prompted this discussion was it was seeming to have a number of development agreements where they were trying to negotiate everything. And I think the planning commission was feeling as though there wasn't necessarily a set policy that defined what the standard was in order for them to ask for a deviation from that. So the goal of this was for the city to make it clear as to what their expectations are for development, and therefore have developers understand what would be exceptions to those standards.
Right. Other questions or comments? Do people have any, particularly with respect to the 2 items that were being asked particularly to consider tonight, and that's the acceleration deceleration lane issue or the model homes issue? Are there any particular concerns anybody has? If not, do we have a motion to approve the pursuant to the terms of the resolution, which would allow some, there needs to be, there's a few things that need to be refined in here, including a couple of blanks that need to be filled in. But subject to that, is there a motion to approve?
I would make that motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, we have at least a couple of policies and a somewhat updated agreement, and which I think will make things easier. So, is there anything else on our agenda? I don't remember anything else on our agenda, and is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Before anyone goes anywhere, we do have in 5 minutes a policy subcommittee meeting, which everyone's invited to. Not everybody is necessarily has joined the policy subcommittee, but you're certainly invited to it. Whoever is going to be, I assume it's Kim, but maybe somebody else can tell us. Do we just, is it the same water